morning, YouTube. Welcome to the Here and Now. I'm gonna look a little weird today because I got some sunburn. I was wearing glasses, whatever. So today, I think I figured out, this is pretty big. I think I figured out how to solve all the major and terrible issues of the world. I got it. Let me explain. We've been on a long journey of evolution as humans. Before we ascended from the limbic system, from the lizard brain, we had no idea what our children's grandchildren would be able to achieve or comprehend. There was no way we could. This is what's happening again now. There's another stage of evolution that our current egoic selves can't comprehend. It is essentially a persistent state beyond identification with the mind, operating instead from an absence of ego, reacting to every situation from a state of peace, inspiring true intelligence. And this is possible for every human. I actually should say it's necessary for every human, just as it was necessary for, fish way back in the day to grow feet. Probably because there was no food left in the little pond they were in, and they got cut off from the rest of the river, and what they had to do, they had to grow some freaking legs. Well, just like our brain cells are all interconnected in our brain, waves of information pass through groups of people like they do in synapses. People contact the same people and pass the information through the same channels on a regular basis, and we're up till now limited by, word of mouth, telegraph, what have you. Communication abilities have grown, as well as the ability to share information in such diverse mediums. It is no surprise that the world is taking extreme turns as a result of the supercharged nature of our sharing abilities today. Singularity is more than just the catalyst for our society to ascend into the age of AI. It has supercharged the collective brain of the human race and will reach a turning point as well. Our waking up on the individual scale is spreading. More and more people are having a realization of the ego. Now that the world is so much more connected, we're able to share these things, and just like how information passes along a brain, it spreads. Now, especially because it's not restricted by, physical means, whereas before it would have to, it'd be limited by your ability to get from A to B. Now, we got a phone. You could just send that shit over to Lucy or whatever and be like, oh, we shared something. Whereas before, you have to walk 2 goddamn miles to her house. So, I look at these large issues in society playing out, and I'm struck by the similarities. I mean, not struck, it's anticipated, of course, to see the processes in yourself and your own battle with ego reflected and multiplied and uh, not copied, but it, it plays out in bigger collective egos. You know, these collective egos, just like our own egos, go through pockets of resistance. You know, change is a signal that you are shedding something which is no longer needed. It can be a good or bad thing. You could change for the worse, of course, but at that moment, you are not in need of good habits or whatever. But same goes for the flip side. Right now, from my own experience, what I've seen playing out since, Obama's first run was like the first time I really got interested in politics. And well, I'm not saying I'm left or right or any what have you. I'm solidly independent. One of the things I noticed from observation was how much resistance would crop up if there was too much change attempted to be implemented too quickly. And not necessarily like if it was slower, then there would be less resistance, but the media does a good job of amplifying collective egoic tendencies and, part and parcel with an individual scale to each individual person they're, advertising or getting the news to. But there's a science in how to engage with, the egoic identification of you while you're watching this show. There's a science, right? They write articles and newscasts in a specific way with specific things emphasized to garner a reaction, because a reactive person will keep their eyeballs on the screen longer, right? But we can still view the public reaction to these big implemented changes, especially in government, as egoic resistance. As much as I, am, I guess, inspired by all these young people, I say young people, but I'm still a young person, interested in politics and inspired, and they want to get part of the conversation and all this. But what you resist persists. So this whole resistance movement is like, well, it's just gonna make them continue. No, not really. But what you resist persists has a more, its purpose is more for inner reflection, right? It's an internal thing. It might not necessarily have anything to do with the object in question that you are resisting. It has everything to do with your inability to stop resisting when it no longer serves you. Feel free to be as deeply involved in activism as you wish. If it makes you feel alive, by God, do it till your fucking heart gives out. But be aware of how attached you become to this collective ego, this political collective ego, and how rigid your righteousness or the opposite party is. There will never be a time where you will have your views, especially if you're heavily identified with one side or the other, have your views in a world that is unencumbered by the opposite views. They will always be there. The pro-life movement, you will always have that opposite. Pro-choice movement, you will always have that opposite. There is no way you are, that's just the basic understanding nature of egos and collective egos, the duality of this, our material world. So what does that leave you with? An inability, or I should say, what does becoming heavily identified with your views and politics leave you with? An inability to compromise. An inability to see the other as yourself. I mean, how many memes have you shared making fun of snowflakes and fucking alt-right, whatever? How many of those people have you gone out and sat down and had a real conversation with? Not out there in the streets while you're protesting, not behind a Facebook comment section or Reddit. In person, sat down and first spent 10-15 minutes telling each other a little bit about your life story, about what's important to you, and about what your fears are. I wonder if it would still be as easy to hate that person and to write that person off as worthless or stupid, or they just don't me. Fuck that person, Oh, well, shit, I actually know this person a little bit now. You're still kind of a dick, but, one of the things that opened my eyes up a little bit because, as an independent, of course, I was going to vote for the only independent running for the presidential election, Bernie. But it's don't even get me started on how disenfranchised the voters were that voted for Bernie. Another video. I didn't realize how much of a bubble I was in. I mean, I heard about the bubble, but of course I wasn't in the bubble. They're in the fucking bubble. And I naturally gravitated towards news stations or outlets that, weren't as controlled by advertising, but I mean, there's really not that much of them. They clearly don't have as many resources as the big news stations do, so there wasn't a steady stream of alternative information. That was until I actually met someone who was like a self-described Trumplican. Very distinct from Republicans, apparently. Like, they hate Mitch McConnell, but they're down with the establishment, they're kind of my kind. Which, I didn't realize just how much each side has an echo chamber within it, right? I didn't realize my side had an echo chamber. And that there would be dirt on this side being pulled that would be fucking blasted to all the viewers over here, right? And oh God, those horrible people, this and that. Well, shit's going down on that side too, but it don't get reported. It's just over here. So everyone's just fucking seeing the worst about each other and assuming that everyone must be that way too. Anyone that's a fucking liberal doesn't work. Or everyone that's on the alt-right is fucking racist. No. I can't speak to your personal experience. You might have had the unfortunate, event of having to deal with someone who was a liberal and they didn't fucking work, or they're fucking racist, bigoted as fucking they're on that side. I'm not denying that there's some truth to stereotypes. Then again, assumptions make an ass out of you and me. So, when we realize that these identity politics are, you know, nothing more than collective egos, you start to come back to realizing that that other person over there you were hating on before is actually a person. They are motivated by fear. They are motivated by insecurity. No matter who they are, unconscious or consciously. And they're not bad people for feeling these ways. Like, you call someone a monster long enough, they start to turn into one. You don't solve this problem by being the one with the biggest fucking stick. You solve it by transmuting whatever pain in any of its forms, anger, frustration, deception, manipulation, all of that shit. If it's done unto you, you realize what it actually is and how those things really have no effect on who you are, on your ability to be at peace here, or your ability to reflect that shit. No, actually, reflect is the wrong word because it would indicate that you're sending it back out. You take that in, and what reflects out is love and compassion and acceptance, because honestly, what's complete in here needs no outside validation, needs no outside confirmation. So it doesn't matter when you're taken advantage of, or when you're called a name, or when you're duped or deceived. It just happened. It just is. Somebody else was acting out of unconsciousness. That's all it is. You, however, are still able to recognize and see how that person is still a part of the oneness that you are. They may be acting under ego, but weren't you just a while ago? Every day, we all take a step back here. You never really eradicate ego. You still always got it. You just learn not to live with it, or learn how to live with it without. Anywho, I just figured, if enough people in the population, percentage-wise, were able to live that way, like if our whole population, if half of our population lived their lives that way, it would take such a huge chunk of the collective anger and frustration and bad shit events happening as a result of these unaddressed egoic, mental and emotional egoic patterns. That's a huge ripple effect. that's a huge decrease in the escalation of, things that play out in world events. That's when we'll see real substantial change. And it starts on the individual level. There ain't gonna be no freaking superhuman that leads us all into a utopia of peace, right? It starts individually, and it needs to happen individually for every single individual. Just saying, if y'all got your shit together, we might actually get somewhere. All right, think that's it. Till next time, stay present.